The funeral director handed me a tissue like I was some fragile flower about to wilt. I wasn't crying. I was calculating how much this whole charade was costing and wondering if Dad would have laughed at the ridiculous flower arrangements shaped like tractors. My name is Riley Fletcher, and I'd just buried the only person in my family who ever believed I had a brain in my head. "Riley, honey, you look so thin," Aunt Martha whispered, squeezing my arm. "City life treating you okay?" "Just fine, thanks." I smoothed down my black dress and scanned the crowd of flannel shirts and work boots. 3 years away felt like 30 when you're standing in a room full of people who still think your biggest accomplishment was winning the county fair pie contest at 16. The real show started after the service, back at the farmhouse where I'd grown up. My brothers Uriah and Harrison had already claimed Dad's old leather chair and the kitchen table like they were marking territory. Uriah, 44 and built like the bulldozer he drove, was holding court with the neighbors. Harrison, 3 years younger but twice as eager to please, nodded along to everything his big brother said. "So, what's the plan for the farm?" asked Jim from down the road, helping himself to another beer from our fridge. "Well," Uriah said, shooting me a look, "the three of us inherited equal shares, but Harrison and I will handle the actual running of things. Riley's got her little city job to get back to." Little city job. I had a degree in urban design and worked for one of Chicago's top planning firms, but sure, little city job. "Actually," I said, setting down my coffee cup harder than necessary, "I was thinking we should discuss some options. The eastern field would be perfect for—" "Riley!" Uriah's voice had that tone. The same one he'd used when I was 12 and suggested we rotate crops instead of planting corn in the same spot every year. "Let's be realistic here. You've been gone 3 years. Harrison and I know this land. I grew up on this land too. Yeah, but you were always more interested in drawing pictures than getting your hands dirty." The room went quiet. I could feel everyone watching, waiting to see if little Riley would make a scene at her own father's funeral reception. "Drawing pictures," I repeated slowly. "Is that what we're calling the irrigation system redesign that saved us $12,000 in water costs my senior year of high school?" Harrison shifted uncomfortably. "That was different. You were just what? Just a kid who spent every summer from age 8 hauling hay bales and fixing fence posts while you two were off playing football." "Riley, come on." Uriah stood up, all 6'3" of him. "You're getting emotional. This is exactly why Dad left the farm to all 3 of us, but expected Harrison and me to actually run it." Emotional. There it was. The magic word that had followed me around this place my entire life. Too emotional to understand business. Too emotional to make hard decisions. Too emotional to be trusted with anything that mattered. "You know what?" I smiled sweetly. "You're absolutely right. I am emotional. I'm emotionally invested in not watching you two run this place into the ground like you did with the North pasture." "That wasn't our fault," Harrison protested. The drought I warned you about 6 months early when I sent you those climate reports? The one you said I was being dramatic about?" Uriah stepped closer. "Look, we appreciate your input, but Harrison and I have been working this farm while you've been playing around in the big city. We know what we're doing. Right. Like when you decided to plant soybeans in the field that floods every spring. That was one mistake. Or when you bought that used tractor without checking the engine and it died 2 weeks later." The room was dead silent now. Even Aunt Martha had stopped pretending to wash dishes. "You know what, Riley?" Uriah's face was getting red. "Maybe it's better if you just take your share of the profits and let the men handle things." Let the men handle things. I'd heard that phrase more times than I could count, usually right before something went spectacularly wrong. I was about to respond when I noticed something. The old wooden stool by the back door, Dad's favorite spot for putting on his work boots, had a piece of paper sticking out from underneath the seat cushion, something white and folded, like it had been tucked there deliberately. "Fine," I said, walking toward the door. You two handle things. I'm sure it'll work out great. I pulled the paper free as casually as I could. My name was written on it in Dad's careful handwriting. Just Riley in blue ink, like he'd been saving it for the right moment. My heart started pounding as I slipped the letter into my purse. Whatever Dad had wanted to tell me, he'd made sure my brothers wouldn't see it first. And something told me this conversation was far from over. I waited until I was back at the motel before opening Dad's letter. My hands were actually shaking as I unfolded the paper, which was ridiculous. I'm 35 years old, not some kid waiting for a report card. Riley, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and your brothers are probably treating you like you don't belong. They get that from their mother's side. All bluster, no vision. You get your vision from me. Don't let them convince you that caring about something makes you weak. The farm needs someone who sees possibilities, not just problems. Trust your gut, sweetheart. It's never steered you wrong. The East Field has more potential than they know. Remember that. Love, Dad. P.S. Check the county planning office. Big changes coming to the rail line. I read it 3 times before it sank in. Dad knew. He knew exactly what would happen after he died, and he'd left me a roadmap. The next morning, I called Caroline. We'd been best friends since elementary school, back when she was the only other girl who thought it was stupid that boys got to drive the tractors while we had to collect eggs. Now she was a real estate lawyer in the state capital, and if anyone would know about rail line changes, it would be her. Riley Fletcher, you beautiful disaster, she answered on the second ring. How are you holding up? I need a favor. Can you look into something for me? Already on it. I heard about the funeral. Your brothers being their charming selves? Worse. They basically told me to take my share of the profits and let the men handle things. Caroline made a sound like she was choking. They said what now? You heard me, so I need to know about this rail line expansion Dad mentioned. What's happening with the Eastern Corridor? Oh, honey. Caroline's voice changed completely. You don't know, do you? The state approved a commuter rail extension 6 months ago. It's going to run right along the eastern edge of your county. Your farm is literally going to be 15 minutes from downtown by train. My heart started racing. How eastern are we talking? Let me pull up the maps. Okay, yeah. The proposed station is maybe 2 miles from your property line. Riley, do you understand what this means? Your land value is about to go through the roof. I sat down hard on the motel bed. How much are we talking? For prime development land near a rail station, in a county that's been zoned for mixed-use development? We're talking maybe 10 times what it's worth for farming. 10 times. I did the math in my head. My third of the farm was roughly 80 acres. At current agricultural prices, that was maybe $300,000. But if Caroline was right. I need to see those zoning maps, I said. I'll email them to you right now. But Riley, there's something else. There's been talk about your area for months. Developers are circling like vultures, but they need someone local to make the first move, someone with actual land rights. What kind of developers? The good kind, sustainable housing, green spaces, community-focused development, not strip malls and parking lots. There's this woman, Vera Mann, who's been trying to get meetings with landowners in your area for 6 months. Your brothers keep shutting her down at township meetings. Of course they did. What's her deal? She builds these amazing eco-friendly communities, tiny homes, community gardens, solar everything. The kind of development that actually improves property values instead of destroying them. I was quiet for a long moment, staring at Dad's letter. Caroline, hypothetically, if I wanted to sell my share of the farm, what would I need to do? Hypothetically? You'd need to get it surveyed and legally separated from your brother's portions. It would take maybe 2 weeks if you had a good lawyer. She paused. Which you do. And they couldn't stop me? Not if you own it outright. Equal inheritance means equal rights, Riley. They can't force you to farm if you don't want to. That afternoon, I drove out to the east field. It was beautiful land, rolling hills, good drainage, close to the main road, but far enough back to feel private. I could picture it exactly the way Caroline had described Vera's developments. Small houses tucked between trees, walking paths, maybe a community center where the old barn stood. My phone buzzed with a text from Harrison. Family meeting tonight. 7 p.m. We need to discuss the solar panel idea you mentioned. Solar panels. I'd suggested them 2 years ago when energy costs were killing our profit margins. They'd laughed and said I was living in Fantasyland. I texted back, "I'll be there." But first, I had a phone call to make. Caroline had sent me Vera Mann's contact information, and something told me this conversation was going to be very interesting. I dialed the number and waited. Vera Mann speaking. "Ms. Mann, this is Riley Fletcher. I understand you've been trying to meet with landowners in Millfield County." Riley Fletcher. Her voice perked up immediately. "I heard you might be ready to make something big happen." I met Vera at a coffee shop 2 towns over. No point in giving the local gossips more ammunition than they already had. She was nothing like I'd expected. Mid-40s, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt that looked more expensive than my entire outfit. Her handshake could have cracked walnuts. "Your brothers hate me," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "I'm the outsider scum who wants to destroy their precious farmland." "They said that?" "Uriah did, at the last township meeting. Called me a carpetbagger who didn't understand rural values." She smiled. "I grew up on a dairy farm in Vermont." I liked her immediately. "So what exactly are you proposing?" I asked. Vera pulled out a tablet and swiped to a photo gallery. "This is what I do. Sustainable micro-communities, 40 to 60 small homes, all solar-powered, built around green spaces and community gardens. We preserve as many existing trees as possible and add native plants." The photos were gorgeous. Tiny houses that looked like they belonged in a magazine, connected by walking paths and surrounded by gardens. Kids playing in a central park area while adults worked in raised garden beds. "The average home is 800 square feet, Vera continued. "Perfect for young professionals who want to live near the new rail line but can't afford traditional housing prices. We're talking about a community, not a subdivision. What kind of money are we talking about? For your 80 acres? Assuming we can get the zoning approved, I'd pay $4 million. I nearly choked on my coffee. $4 million? The rail line changes everything. Your land is going to be prime real estate whether you sell to me or someone else. The question is whether you want it developed responsibly or turned into another strip mall." I thought about the Walmart that had killed downtown 3 counties over. "What would you need from me?" "Full ownership of your portion, plus cooperation on the access road. The eastern field is perfect because it connects to County Road 15. But we'd need to upgrade the infrastructure." "My brothers would never agree to that." Vera's smile was sharp. "They don't have to. If you own your third outright, you control access to their portions too. The main road runs along your property line." I stared at her. "You're saying I could sell my land and they'd have to go through me to get to theirs?" "I'm saying property rights are property rights. If they want access to the county road, they'd need to negotiate with whoever owns the access point." This was getting interesting. "Let me ask you something," I said. "Have you seen our farm operation? What my brothers are actually doing with the land?" "I drive by sometimes. It's not exactly cutting-edge agriculture." That was putting it nicely. Last month, they'd planted corn in a field that hadn't been properly fertilized in 3 years. The crop yield was going to be pathetic. "They're running it into the ground," I said. "Dad left us equal shares, but they act like I'm some city girl who doesn't know dirt from diamonds." "Are you?" "I spent every summer until I was 18 working that farm. I know exactly how much money they're losing every season." Vera leaned forward. "Then why not do something about it?" I thought about Dad's letter. "Trust your gut, sweetheart." "If I did this," I said slowly, "how quickly could it happen?" "I can have contracts drawn up by tomorrow." Zoning approval takes about 6 weeks, but I can start the process immediately. We could close in 2 months. And my brothers? Would find out when the surveyors show up. The family meeting that night was exactly what I'd expected. Uriah had printed out some article about solar panel maintenance costs. Harrison had a calculator and a legal pad covered in numbers that didn't add up. "So here's the thing about your solar idea," Uriah said, not bothering with hello. "The initial investment is too high, and the payback period is too long." "How long?" I asked. 7 years. Minimum. "And how long have we been losing money on the north pasture?" Harrison shifted uncomfortably. "That's different." "Is it? Because I'm looking at land that could be profitable immediately, instead of maybe breaking even in 7 years. "Riley, you don't understand the economics of farming," Uriah said. "This isn't some city planning project where you can just redesign everything." "You're right," I said. "It's not a city planning project, it's a business. And businesses need to make money." "We make money." "Do we? Because last time I checked, you took out a loan against the equipment to cover operating costs." The silence stretched out. Harrison was staring at his calculator like it might provide answers. "How did you know about the loan?" Uriah asked quietly. "Dad told me. Before he died. He was worried about the debt. We're handling it. By planting the same crops in the same fields and hoping for better weather?" Uriah stood up. "You know what, Riley? If you don't like how we're running things, maybe you should just sell your share and let us buy you out." I smiled. "That's actually not a bad idea." "Good. We can probably manage 15,000 an acre." 15,000. For land that was about to be worth 50,000 an acre. "I'll think about it," I said. But I'd already made up my mind. I was going to call Vera as soon as I got back to the motel. My brothers had just given me permission to do exactly what I wanted to do. The bulldozers showed up on a Tuesday morning at 7:30 sharp. I was sitting on the motel balcony with my coffee, watching the sun come up over the east field, when I heard the rumble of heavy machinery. My phone started ringing 30 seconds later. What the hell is going on? Uriah's voice was so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Good morning to you too. Riley, there are bulldozers on our land. What did you do?" "I sold my share, just like you suggested." The silence lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. "You what?" "Sold my share. You know, that thing you said I should do if I didn't like how you were running things?" "To who?" "Vera Mann, the carpetbagger you hate so much. Turns out she pays a lot better than 15,000 an acre." I could hear Harrison in the background asking what was happening. "How much?" Uriah's voice was deadly quiet. $4 million. $4 million. He was sputtering now. "Riley, you can't just sell without telling us." "Actually, I can. Caroline made sure all the paperwork was in order. Equal inheritance means equal rights, remember? But the access road runs through my property. Well, Vera's property now." Another long silence. Then Harrison grabbed the phone. "Riley, please tell me you didn't really do this." "I really did this. But we're family." "Family that told me to let the men handle things. So I did. I let a very capable woman handle it instead." I hung up and called Caroline. "How's it going over there?" she asked. "The bulldozers just arrived. My brothers are having a collective meltdown." "Good." "Vera's lawyer called this morning. The zoning approval is moving faster than expected. Apparently the county is very excited about the tax revenue potential." "And the access issue?" "Oh, that's the beautiful part. Since Vera now controls the main road access, your brothers will need to lease usage rights if they want to get their equipment in and out." "How much are we talking?" $5,000 a month. Each." I nearly dropped my coffee. "Each?" "Commercial vehicle access isn't cheap. And technically, they're running a business that requires heavy machinery access to county roads. $10,000 a month just to get to their own land." I should have felt guilty, but mostly I felt satisfied. My phone rang again. This time it was Harrison, and he sounded like he was crying. "Riley, you have to fix this. We can't afford $10,000 a month in access fees." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided I was too emotional to have opinions about the family business." "We never said that. You said I was too emotional to handle the farm. You said I should let the men handle things. You said I lived in Fantasyland. Should I keep going?" "That's not—" "We didn't mean—" "What did you mean, Harrison?" He was quiet for a long moment. "We meant that you don't understand farming." "I understand farming just fine. I also understand business and real estate. And the fact that you two have been running this place into debt for 3 years. How did you know about the debt?" "Because I'm not stupid, despite what you and Uriah seem to think. Dad told me about the loans. He told me about the failed crops. He told me he was worried about what would happen to the farm after he died." "So you decided to destroy it?" "I decided to save my piece of it." The local newspaper ran the story on the front page the next day. "Fletcher Farm sold to developers. Sister strikes historic deal." The photo showed me shaking hands with Vera in front of the construction equipment, both of us smiling. I was having lunch at the diner when Uriah finally showed up. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "We need to talk," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "I'm listening." "This is our family's land, Riley. 4 generations of Fletchers have worked this farm. And now 1 generation of Fletchers has made more money from it than the previous 4 combined. It's not about the money, isn't it? Because last week you offered to buy me out for a fraction of what it was worth. That seemed pretty money-focused to me." Uriah leaned forward. "You're destroying everything Dad built. Dad built a farm that was losing money every year. I turned it into something profitable. You turned it into a housing development. I turned my third of it into a housing development. You're welcome to keep farming your 2/3. Assuming you can afford the access fees." "Riley, please, we're family." "We're family when you need something. The rest of the time, I'm just the emotional little sister who doesn't understand the real world." He stared at me for a long moment. "What do you want?" "I want you to admit that I was right. About the solar panels, about crop rotation, about the irrigation system, about every single suggestion you laughed at over the years. Fine, you were right. And I want you to admit that calling me too emotional was just your way of dismissing me because I'm a woman." His jaw tightened. That's exactly what it was." He stood up abruptly. "You know what? Keep your money. Keep your development. But don't expect us to pretend this didn't happen. I wouldn't dream of it." He walked out without another word. Through the diner window, I watched him climb into his truck and drive away. My phone buzzed with a text from Caroline. "Saw the newspaper. How does it feel to be the most powerful woman in the county?" I typed back, "Like I should have done this years ago." Meredith Hunter knocked on my motel door at 8 in the morning, carrying a thermos of coffee and wearing the same determined expression she'd had when she ran the PTA for 20 years. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me into the room. "Good morning to you too, Meredith." She poured coffee into 2 paper cups and handed me one. "Sit down, honey. It's time you heard some family history your brothers don't know." I sat. Meredith had been Dad's neighbor for 30 years and knew more about our family than we did. "Your great-grandmother Sarah wanted to plant apple orchards on the South Hill," she began. "The men said fruit trees were too risky. Your grandmother Ruth suggested raising sheep instead of just cattle. The men said she didn't understand livestock. Your mother wanted to start a farm stand to sell directly to customers. The men said it was too much work." I'm sensing a pattern. "Every generation," Meredith continued, "the women in your family had ideas, good ideas, and every generation, the men shut them down. Your father was different, though. He listened to your mother. That's why the farm survived as long as it did. What happened to the women's ideas? Sarah's apple orchard idea? The Johnsons planted one 5 years later and made a fortune. Ruth's sheep? The Millers started raising them and cornered the local wool market. Your mother's farm stand? 3 families in the county run them now, making more per acre than traditional farming ever could. I stared into my coffee. So, I'm not the first Fletcher woman to be told she doesn't understand farming. Honey, you're the first one with enough money and legal knowledge to do something about it. My phone had been ringing all morning. Word travels fast in small towns, and apparently, everyone had opinions about what I'd done. The first few calls were predictable. Angry farmers calling me a traitor, old-timers saying I'd destroyed the family legacy. But then the calls started getting interesting. Is this Riley Fletcher? The voice was young, female. Yes. My name is Jessica. I run a small organic farm about 20 miles from you. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for what? For showing these old boys that women can make business decisions too. My husband's been telling me for 2 years that my ideas for expanding into farmers' markets are too risky. After seeing what you did, I'm doing it anyway. 3 more calls like that came in over the next hour. Women thanking me for shaking up the old boys club. One was a young mother who wanted to start a daycare center, but whose father-in-law kept saying it wasn't a real business. Another was a teacher who'd been trying to get funding for a school garden program. You've become a symbol, Caroline said when I called her. Like it or not, you're the woman who stood up to the patriarchy and won. I just sold some land. You did a lot more than that, and you know it. That evening, Harrison showed up at my motel room. He looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, clothes that hadn't been changed in days. Can I come in? He asked quietly. I opened the door wider. He sat down heavily on the chair by the window. Uriah doesn't know I'm here, he said. Okay. Riley, we're in trouble, real trouble. How much trouble? He pulled out a folder full of papers, bank statements, loan documents, bills. We owe $200,000. The equipment loans, the operating expenses, the seed money for this year's crops. Dad was covering most of it before he died, but we didn't know how bad it was. I looked through the papers. It was worse than I'd thought. They'd been borrowing against next year's harvest to pay for this year's expenses. How long do you have? 6 months, maybe, if we have a good harvest and prices stay high. He laughed bitterly. But you know how likely that is. What does Uriah say? Uriah thinks we can work our way out of it. He's talking about taking out another loan against the remaining land. Harrison, that's insane. You'll lose everything. I know. He put his head in his hands. I know, okay? But what choice do we have? You took the only valuable piece of the property. I took my piece of the property, the piece I inherited fair and square. I'm not blaming you. He looked up at me. Actually, that's not true. I am blaming you. But I also understand why you did it. We sat in silence for a moment. Do you remember when Mom got sick? He asked suddenly. Of course. Do you remember how Dad cried in the barn because he couldn't afford her insulin and the mortgage payment in the same month? I nodded. I'd been 16, hiding in the hayloft, listening to my father sob. I swore I'd never let that happen again, that I'd make the farm profitable enough to take care of the family. He laughed bitterly. Instead, I'm about to lose it all. Harrison! No, let me finish. You were right about the solar panels. You were right about crop rotation. You were right about the irrigation system. You were right about everything, and we were too proud to listen. So what are you going to do? I don't know. Uriah wants to fight the access fees in court, but Caroline says we don't have a case. You don't? Then I guess we're going to lose the farm. He stood up. I just wanted you to know that I don't hate you for what you did. I hate that it came to this, but I don't hate you. After he left, I sat staring at those financial documents for a long time. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Ms. Fletcher, this is Vera Mann. I have a proposition that might interest you. Can we meet tomorrow? I texted back. What kind of proposition? The kind that might help your family and the community at the same time. Vera met me at the construction site the next morning. The foundation work was already underway, and I could see the skeleton of what would become the first micro-homes. Workers in hard hats were moving with purpose, turning my childhood memories into something entirely new. "It's really happening," I said, watching a crane position steel beams. "Faster than I expected. The county fast-tracked our permits." Vera handed me a coffee. "Turns out they're very motivated by the tax revenue projections." "You said you had a proposition?" "Walk with me." We headed toward the area where the old chicken coop used to stand. "I've been talking to some investors about expanding the project, not just housing, but community infrastructure." "What kind of infrastructure?" "A women's entrepreneurship center, business incubators, shared office space, meeting rooms, childcare facilities, a place where women can start businesses without having to drive an hour to the city." I stopped walking. "You want to build that here?" "I want you to help me build it. Your story has gotten attention, Riley. Regional newspapers, a few blogs, even some interest from a documentary filmmaker. You've become the face of rural women fighting back against old boys' networks." "I just sold some land." "You did a lot more than that." Vera pulled out her tablet and showed me architectural drawings. This would be a 15,000 square foot facility. Conference rooms, co-working spaces, a commercial kitchen for food entrepreneurs, even a small retail showroom. The drawings were beautiful, modern but warm, with lots of natural light and green spaces. How much would something like this cost? $2 million for construction, another $1 million for equipment in the first year of operations. That's a lot of money. It is, but I have investors lined up for most of it. What I need is a local partner, someone with credibility in the community who can help make this more than just another development project. What are you asking me to do? Be the public face, help with fundraising, maybe contribute some of your own money as seed funding. She paused. And let us name it after you. I stared at the drawings. A building with my name on it, dedicated to helping women start businesses. 6 months ago, my brothers were telling me I was too emotional to have opinions about farming. How much seed funding? $500,000 would make a real statement, show that you're committed to the community, not just taking the money and running. $500,000. It was a lot of money, but I'd still have more than enough left over to do whatever I wanted with my life. I need to think about it. Of course. But Riley, there's something else. The ribbon-cutting ceremony for the housing development is scheduled for next month. The mayor wants to make it a big event. Press coverage, regional politicians, the works. And? I'd like you to speak, tell your story, show people that this isn't just about development, it's about giving rural women a voice. That afternoon, Caroline called with news. "I just got off the phone with Mayor Lucas," she said. "He wants to meet with you about the entrepreneurship center idea." "Vera told you about that?" "Vera told everyone about that. Riley, do you understand what's happening here? You're not just some woman who sold her farm anymore. You're becoming a regional power player." "That's ridiculous." "Is it? You've got $4 million, political connections, and a story that's resonating with women across 3 counties. The mayor wants to discuss tax incentives for the entrepreneurship center. The State Economic Development Office is interested in using your project as a model for other rural areas." I was quiet for a moment. "Caroline? What if I mess this up? What if you don't? What if you actually help change things for women in rural communities?" That evening, I drove out to Dad's grave. The cemetery was quiet, just me and the sound of wind through the oak trees. "I don't know if you'd be proud of what I did, Dad," I said to his headstone. "I know you loved that land, but I couldn't let them keep treating me like I didn't matter." The wind picked up, rustling the flowers someone had left on a nearby grave. "Vera wants me to put my name on a building. Can you believe that? The girl who used to hide in the hayloft might have a building named after her." I pulled out my phone and called Vera. "I'll do it," I said when she answered. "The speaking engagement? All of it. The entrepreneurship center, the seed funding, the ribbon-cutting speech. All of it. Riley, that's fantastic. What changed your mind? I looked at Dad's grave, thinking about all the Fletcher women who'd had their ideas dismissed over the years. I realized that this isn't just about me anymore. It's about making sure other women don't have to choose between family and being heard. We're going to change things, aren't we? We already are. After I hung up, I stayed at the cemetery for another hour, watching the sun set over the fields where I'd grown up. Tomorrow, I'd start planning a speech that would either make me a hero or a villain in this town. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The red dress had been Caroline's idea. "You need to look like someone who belongs in boardrooms, not barns," she'd said. It was designer, cost more than I used to make in a month, and made me feel like I was wearing armor. I arrived at the ribbon-cutting ceremony in Vera's Tesla, which probably annoyed half the crowd before I even got out of the car. The development looked incredible. 12 tiny homes clustered around a central green space, solar panels glinting in the morning sun, walking paths lined with native wildflowers. Mayor Lucas was already working the crowd, shaking hands and posing for photos. Local news crews had set up cameras near the ribbon, and I spotted reporters from 3 regional newspapers. "You ready for this?" Vera asked, straightening my lapel like a boxing coach preparing a fighter. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Remember, you're not defending what you did. You're explaining why it was necessary." The crowd was bigger than I'd expected, maybe 200 people, including faces I recognized from high school, neighbors I'd grown up with, and plenty of strangers who'd driven in from surrounding counties. I spotted my brothers near the back, standing apart from everyone else like they were at a funeral. Caroline appeared at my elbow with her 17-year-old son Braden in tow. He was tall and lanky, all elbows and enthusiasm, carrying a portfolio under his arm. "Aunt Riley." He'd been calling me that since he was 5, even though I wasn't technically his aunt. "Mom told me about the Entrepreneurship Center. I brought some sketches." "Braden's been accepted to the state architecture program," Caroline said proudly. "He wants to specialize in sustainable community design." "Just like you taught me," Braden said, grinning. "Remember when you showed me how to design that treehouse with proper load-bearing supports?" I did remember. He'd been 12, obsessed with building things, and I'd spent a whole weekend teaching him about structural engineering, using Lincoln logs and popsicle sticks. Mayor Lucas tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the grand opening of Millfield Commons, our county's first sustainable micro-housing development." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. "This project represents the future of rural development, environmentally responsible, economically viable, and community-focused. I'd like to introduce the visionary behind this project, Ms. Vera Mann." Vera stepped up to the microphone with confidence. "Thank you, Mayor Lucas. This development exists because one woman had the courage to see possibilities instead of just problems. Riley Fletcher, would you join me?" My heart was pounding as I walked to the microphone. I could see my brothers' faces in the crowd. Harrison looked nervous. Uriah looked angry. "6 months ago," I began, "my brothers told me I was too emotional to handle our family farm. They said I should let the men handle things." A murmur went through the crowd. They weren't entirely wrong. I am emotional. I'm emotionally invested in seeing rural communities thrive instead of just survive. I'm emotionally committed to making sure women's voices are heard in business decisions. And I'm emotionally driven to prove that caring about something doesn't make you weak. It makes you powerful. The murmur was getting louder. I could see people nodding. This development isn't just about housing. It's about creating opportunities. The rail line will bring jobs. The increased tax revenue will improve schools and infrastructure. And next year we'll break ground on the Fletcher Women's Entrepreneurship Center. That got a real reaction. Applause, some cheers, and I could see Uriah's face turning red. I'm personally contributing $500,000 to establish this center, and I'm proud to announce that Braden Sullivan will be our inaugural youth architect mentee, helping design spaces where the next generation of rural entrepreneurs can build their dreams. Braden's face lit up like Christmas morning. Caroline was crying happy tears. Some of you think I betrayed my family's legacy. I think I honored it. My great-grandmother wanted to plant apple orchards. My grandmother wanted to raise sheep. My mother wanted to start a farm stand. All of them were told their ideas weren't practical. I looked directly at my brothers. Well, this is what happens when you stop telling women their ideas aren't practical and start listening to what they have to say. The applause was loud now, sustained. I could see women in the crowd clapping enthusiastically, some wiping away tears. You always said I wasn't a farmer, I continued, my voice carrying over the crowd. You were right. I'm something bigger. That's when Uriah lost it. This is bullshit, he shouted, pushing through the crowd toward the microphone. You destroyed our family's farm for a publicity stunt. The cameras immediately swung toward him. This was going to be on the evening news. You sold out 4 generations of hard work for money, he continued, his face purple with rage. You don't care about this community. You don't care about tradition. You don't care about anything except making yourself look good. The crowd had gone completely silent. Even the reporters looked uncomfortable. I stepped back to the microphone, calm as still water. You're right about one thing, Uriah. I don't care about tradition when tradition means silencing half the population. I care about progress. I care about giving women opportunities. And I care about proving that emotional intelligence is a strength, not a weakness. I turned away from the microphone and walked toward the ribbon, scissors in hand. The cameras followed me, flashing as I cut through the red ribbon with one clean snip. Behind me, I could hear Uriah still shouting, but his voice was getting farther away. I was walking forward now, into the green plaza where children would play and families would build new lives. I didn't look back. The Fletcher Women's Entrepreneurship Center opened on a crisp October morning, built where the old chicken coop used to stand. Braden had designed it perfectly, modern glass and steel that somehow felt like it belonged among the oak trees, with solar panels that caught the morning light like mirrors. I was standing in the main conference room, watching 3 women pitch their business ideas to a panel of investors when Caroline found me. The coffee truck outside is doing amazing business, she said. Sarah's already talking about expanding to 3 more locations. Sarah was one of our first success stories. A single mom who'd started roasting coffee beans in her kitchen and now employed 6 people. And the daycare center? Booked solid through next year. Turns out rural working parents really needed quality childcare options. Through the window, I could see kids playing in the courtyard while their mothers attended workshops inside. The sight still made me smile. Riley? A young woman approached us hesitantly. I'm Jessica from the organic farm. We talked on the phone after the ribbon cutting. Of course. How's the farmers market expansion going? Better than I dreamed. I wanted to thank you again. My husband finally admitted I was right about direct sales. We're making 3 times what we used to. She walked away beaming, and Caroline nudged me. You know you've changed this whole county, right? We've changed it. This was never just about me. My phone buzzed with a text from Harrison. Can we talk? I'm outside. I found him sitting on one of the benches Braden had designed, staring at the building. He looked older than his 41 years, but calmer than I'd seen him since Dad's funeral. Nice place, he said when I sat down beside him. Braden did good work. He did. Harrison was quiet for a moment. Riley, I need to tell you something. We sold the farm. I wasn't surprised, but it still hit me harder than I expected. To who? 3 different buyers. The north pasture went to the Johnsons. They're expanding their apple orchard. The south fields went to a young couple from the city who want to try sustainable farming, and the house and barn went to a family with kids who needed more space. What about you and Uriah? I'm working for the county now, road maintenance crew. It's honest work and I can pay my bills. He paused. Uriah moved to his wife's family farm 2 counties over. He's still angry. At me? At everything. At you, at himself, at Dad for dying, at the world for changing. Harrison looked at me. But mostly at himself, I think. He knows we screwed up. We sat in comfortable silence, watching a group of women walk into the building carrying laptops and coffee cups. I got your email, I said finally. He'd sent it 3 weeks ago. Just 2 lines. Thank you for trying to save the farm, even when we wouldn't listen. I'm sorry we made you choose between family and being heard. I meant every word. I know you did. Do you think Dad would be proud of what you built here? I considered the question seriously. I think he'd be proud that I didn't give up, that I found a way to honor the land without letting it trap me. Harrison nodded. He always said you were the smartest one in the family. He said that? All the time. Usually right after Uriah and I did something stupid. Harrison smiled sadly. He used to say you got your mother's heart and his stubborn streak, and that combination would either save the world or burn it down. Which do you think it was? Little of both, maybe. A car pulled up, and Vera got out carrying a bottle of champagne. Perfect timing, she called out. The documentary crew just confirmed they want to feature the center in their film about rural innovation. What documentary? Harrison asked. Some filmmaker heard about Riley's story and decided it was worth telling. They've been following the project for months. Harrison looked at me with something like awe. You're going to be famous. I'm going to be useful, I corrected. There's a difference. Vera joined us on the bench. The mayor wants to discuss expanding the program to other counties. Apparently, 3 neighboring towns have inquired about starting their own women's entrepreneurship centers. Franchising feminism, Caroline said, appearing with Braden in tow. I love it. Braden was practically bouncing with excitement. Aunt Riley, they want me to design the next center, and the one after that. I'm going to specialize in community spaces that empower women. Just remember, I told him, the best buildings don't just house dreams, they help them grow. As the sun set over the center, I pulled out my phone and opened a new email. The recipient was Dad's old email address, which I knew would bounce back, but I needed to write it anyway. Dad. I didn't ruin the land like Uriah said I would. I didn't abandon our family's legacy like Harrison feared I might. I just finally made it mine. The East Field where you taught me to drive the tractor now has 12 families building new lives. The chicken coop where I collected eggs every morning is now a place where women learn to build businesses. The barn where you stored hay is now a conference center where people make deals and chase dreams. You once told me to pull weeds before they choke the roots. I just took longer to recognize what weeds look like. The land finally listens to me, Dad, even if they never did. Love. Riley. I hit send, knowing it would bounce back with an error message. But sometimes you have to say things out loud, even if no one's listening, especially if no one's listening. The center's lights were still on, women inside planning and dreaming and building something new. Tomorrow, more would come. And the day after that, even more. I'd turned my inheritance into something bigger than any of us had imagined. Not just money, not just buildings, but possibility itself. And that felt like the best revenge of all.